Financial flows, whether domestic, regional, or international, are central to economic growth and development. These include foreign direct investment, FDI, remittances, aid, trade finance, portfolio investment, and many more. In an increasingly interconnected global economy, the direction, transparency, and efficiency of these flows significantly influence sustainable development, debt sustainability, infrastructure financing, and economic resilience. Understanding the structural barriers, risks, and opportunities shaping financial flows is critical as governments, institutions, and private investors mobilize resources for development. Among these challenges, illicit financial flows pose a particularly serious threat, especially in Africa and other developing regions. The IFFs involve illegally earned, transferred, or used funds, often linked to corruption, tax evasion, money laundering, and trade misinvoicing. On the program Nigeria Today, we will be talking about tackling illicit financial flows with two experts here in the studio. Welcome to the program. I'm Eucharia Clinton. Now, with me in the studio to discuss tackling illicit financial flows is Reverend David Ugolo, the Executive Director, Anish. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you, Kira.
Also with us for this conversation is Abubakar Ahmed Tanimu. He's a legal practitioner, also a former banker. It's a pleasure to have you in Nigeria Today. I'll start with you, Tanimu. For the layman on the streets, how can you explain illicit financial flows?
Okay, very, very simple. Thank you for having me once again. So, if you look at, we live in a society that is interwoven, that is interconnected. Before now, we used to do exchanges through trade and barter. Then we now have monetary system where you now have promissory notes, cash representing value, and now we have now gone global. You now have digitalization of all this process. Every transaction is backed by a value. If you are selling, maybe you have gold, you have petroleum products, you want to exchange, that's definitely the exchange will be based on flow. So you now have a situation where such kind of transactions are guided by certain rules and regulation as stipulated by the various regulatory bodies regulating such kind of transaction both internally and externally. So if we have people that are not complying to those rules and regulation, such kind of financing will now become what they call illicit, because it has either been in short of the regulatory framework as stipulated by the various gamuts of our law. For a start, if you are importing capital or you are bringing money into the country, you are supposed to register with relevant agencies, Security and State Commission, the CBN, the NIFAU. All these bodies are expected to know that, okay, these inflows that you are expected are for a particular purpose, and that purpose are allowed. What you are doing, the transaction, is allowed by the provisions of our laws. So in a situation where you hide the purpose for which such kind of flows are received, automatically it has become illicit. If what the monies that are coming in, that are being transferred, circulated, are not for the purpose which you have disclosed, then it is illicit. And if you look at the sheer volume of such kind of inflow, is stupendous. Every bank in Nigeria, in one way or the other, have received such kind of inflows. The question that we will beg to ask is, what have they done with such kind of inflows? I will tell you for free, most banks, majority of the banks, they rather keep those monies in their system in the pretense that they are conducting investigation. They want to know the source of the money, they want to know the owners of the money, and they will hide under the shadow of passive investigation. They can keep the monies for years. And banking is about
you're talking about the ones that are coming in. Okay. Yes. Of course I'll come back to you. Let Reverend Ugolo and I'll talk to us. I know he's been in the forefront of people that are, working with, the agencies that are ensuring that monies that are outside the country illegally, that went outside the country, come back into the country. Now, talk to us. What are the key drivers of these, illicit financial flows?
Well, there are three pillars of illicit financial flow. Just to add, in addition, that there are those that are involved in commercial trade-based profit shifting and all that. And they don't declare the right profit, and they ship it in a very legal channel out of the country. And there are those also involved in criminal acts, and we have those also involved in corruption, particularly the one that we're familiar, the illicit financial flow we are familiar in this part of the country is the ones that are mostly involved politically exposed persons, like the one like Abacha loot. That one is very popular. It's the most used word globally. We've had the Abacha 1, Abacha 2, Abacha 3, because these are recoveries that were returned back to the country. So politically exposed persons that are involved in corruptions, like he explained, they will not want to take the money through channels where it will be discovered. So they use all kind of means to cover up the source of the fund. And in that process, it become an illicit fund. And then they take it out of the country. So what are the driver? The driver is that one, most of these politically exposed persons, they need this money to do a lot of things. Keep it for some investment that is not for the benefit of the country.
And Nigeria doesn't need the money.
Nigeria needs the money, and then money that...
Because you said they need this money for...
yes, for their own personal, at the expense of the country.
For their own selfish.
Yes, so money that is supposed to be going for education, money that is supposed to be going for the health sector, money that is supposed to be going for the agricultural sector, constructions, capital projects in the country, found themselves in private banks outside the country. And then internally, you have had the former CBN governor, who has also had a number of houses, and the government has since confiscated these houses. And you have also had several occasions where this EFCC and other anti-corruption agency have also gone to court to ask for forfeiture of some of these assets that most politically exposed persons and even civil servants are not able to defend the ownership. All those are source of illicit financial flow. And like I said, there are some different categories of illicit financial flow. So, but the one that we are very familiar with. So what are the drivers? What really? There are some, for example, like the commercial one, companies that are operating, they want to make more profit. The company wants to make more profit, and as you know,
at the expense of the
country. And if the country tax system, for example, they try to dodge tax, evade tax, and that's so that they can make more profit for their shareholders. That could be a motivating factor. And then, if the country regulatory system is weak, for example, and they take advantage of it. For example, the Security Exchange Commission, they are supposed to be monitoring some of these banks. And if the banks do not comply, and then some of these banks are supposed to also be disclosing suspicious reporting transactions. And the NFIU as a anti-corruption agency that are supposed to be keeping eyes on those. If they keep their eyes away, the bank can take an advantage. And so these are some of the opportunities that some individuals, even companies, take advantage. And there could be coalition, both local and international partners working together to make sure that these things goes out of the country. To let you know how damaging this is, the African...
Before we go into the damage, we would also look at, let me hear from Tanimu. You've been in the banking industry. What are some of the loopholes that you think some of these persons or organizations capitalize on to engage in these illicit financial flows?
Basically, the loophole is the poor sanctions for wrongdoing. As I'm telling you, personally, I'm aware of so many banks. All the major banks are in one way or involved. They are in one way or the other. They are involved. What happens is that this flow is a two-way traffic. It's a form of money laundering. Money are going out At the same time, they are making efforts to bring in those money back under the guise of capital project financing. So what happened is that they present an account, a SWIFT code, a sort code from their regular bank, and you can see maybe they just send in 300 billion, 500 billion in most of all the banks. What is expected of the bank? A bank, not naturally, they don't reject inflow. But the moment you receive such inflow, you are supposed to report such inflow as being a suspicious transaction, and you make effort so that the regulatory agencies should now take immediate action. Investigation will be carried out. The source, the origin of the money will be identified.
So why is that not done?
It's not done because the CBN that is supposed to sanction erring banks, since either they are colluding or they lack the capacity. Some banks would rather take the sanction. If you make a profit of maybe 10 billion for keeping such kind of illicit funds for 5 years, we've seen prominent top-tier banks keeping such kind of funds for more than 5 years. They use litigation, for example. They go to court, they tell with the supposed owner that the matter is in court, so they will use that as a basis. It got so bad that the CBN has issued a circular that all banks in Nigeria with such kind of illicit flow should remit and warehouse such funds with the central bank. They are not doing it. They rather take the hit, maybe sanction 2 billion, they will pay. But they will keep those.
And probably it's lucrative too.
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's armchair banking.
Okay, thank you, Tedibu. Now, back to you, Reverend Ogolo. How damaging is this to our economy, our reputation, and of course our foreign investments?
For instance, just to tell you how damaging it is, Nigeria is on the green list of the Financial Action Task Force. Financial Action Task Force is a global financial regulatory system that provides sanctioned countries whose financial system is not very clean. And today Nigeria is on the green list, and because of this, investors find it difficult of coming to our national financial system to do investment, and even our bank, difficult for them to get a correspondent bank to do transaction with them. So the cost of capital is very high, and interest rate is very high. And so because of this, those investors and little people, entrepreneurs who wants to look for money to do investment, is difficult for them. So the interest rate is very high. And because of this, the economy cannot grow. If there's no investment and there's no growth, then the poverty will continue to increase. So you can see direct correlation between illicit financial flow and underdevelopment and poverty. And this link is what leads to crisis. You look in the northeast part of the country today, the conflict that we're experiencing there, they are all associated with this illicit financial flow. And illicit financial flow could be from the extractive sector, like the oil and gas sector. It could be from the mining. It could be from different kind of sector. So and then there are enablers for this. There are enablers like the lawyers. Those are sectors, like for example in the property sector, the real estate agent, and that's why government try to put a system in place to checkmate how these professionals are operating. And this is one of the reasons recently we met in a new project we've just launched to see how the tackling of illicit financial flow can be achieved through asset recovery and management, and then countering terrorist financing in the country and money laundering. And now, if you look the country entirely, you see how government tried to deal with this challenge by the enactment of the Proceeds of Crime Act of 2022. That Proceeds of Crime Act provides a kind of a national architecture with which anti-corruption agency, which include EFCC, ICPC, NFIU, Code of Conduct, all these anti-corruption agencies are all working towards to tackle the challenge of illicit financial flow.
Thank you very much.
And they do this by asset recovery and management in the country.
Okay. We'll just take a break now. We'll continue with our conversation after the break. Don't go away.
The implementation of the ruling is also dependent on another aspect or another arm of government.
Nowhere in the world will allow under digital economy for banks not to be dispensing domestic currency in that economy.
What will make this one different?
We want to know what they do as occupation. All of these are attributes that our questions have been designed to investigate.
In a few days to come, you see that they are all around their own crannies and everywhere in Nigeria, telling people to cooperate.
Welcome to Nigeria Today. Welcome back. This is still Nigeria Today, and we are looking at tackling illicit financial flows in Nigeria. And of course, I have two gentlemen here in the studio with me. Now, Tanimu, Reverend Ogola has mentioned quite a lot of damages causing to our country as a whole. Now, talk to us. You earlier on you mentioned the regulators are not doing what they should do.
Absolutely.
Now, what areas do you think there are gaps and that they should feel as a matter of urgency?
Yeah. I will come to this, but I want to equally add one other aspect that illicit financial flow is affecting the country negatively, which you had mentioned, is the aspect of terrorism financing. So all the major crimes you are seeing, all the terrorism and banditry activities in Zamfara, in Katsina, in Maiduguri, all the kidnapping thing, where did they get their arms, their ammunition? It's through this illicit financial flow. The monies are coming in. They have access to the monies because no bank will give them such kind of money. So they have their agents, they have their sponsors. They use those channels to get those monies to perpetrate those crimes, and they equally use the same channel. And in all this financial sector, the banks, they are all colluders in it. So until authority, and even the authorities are supposed to investigate, some of them too are equally in collusion. Yeah, they are corporate, because a single person cannot consummate such transactions. So having said that, the regulatory framework, if you have a situation where the CBN lacks the capacity to investigate bank, you are going on banking supervision, you are going on banking examination, and you are relying on what the banks are giving you. You don't have ways of going around the end back server. If you want to conduct a proper audit in NTA, for example, you have to adopt forensic audit. Banks are declaring billions of naira, and yet the economy is in comatose. There are no doing proper financial intermediation for businesses to generate. So it's a no-brainer that you know that the profits they are declaring is part of the proceeds of those illicit financial flow. They are all aware, they are all colluders, and then because the regulatory framework, the central bank now has not been able to sanction. We don't want to see era of people being punished because they've diverted or they've deliberately kept. Licenses should be revoked.
Okay.
You cannot have a top-tier bank, part of maybe the top three largest banks are equally part of all this that is happening. And then the CBN, most times, they want to sanction. You are sanctioning somebody to pay a fine of 2 billion. That same person has benefited maybe 10 billion. If you keep such money, any money you keep in any financial institution, I don't need to tell you that I have placed your monies, those inflow in any financial institution. Bank does financial intermediation. You take from the surpluses, the deposits that people deposit, the monies that has come into the bank. So imagine a bank that has received an inflow of 1 trillion naira. At least, so for now you would say maybe because the investigation have not been concluded, is an illicit inflow, and the bank will now be able to disburse facilities, loans, give out loans that is commensurate to that amount, pending when the investigation, and you see the investigation taking years, maybe 5 years. So imagine the amount the bank must have generated.
So what should be done in this case?
You revoke their licenses, because now CBN, I'm giving a typical example. CBN have given a clear directive that pending the outcome of your investigation, the moment you receive such kind of illicit, suspicious inflow, kindly warehouse these monies with the central bank. When you are done with your investigation, If it means the central bank now to return the money from the source, if it means the central bank to return the money to the originating country, if it is maybe the EFCC or any of the anti-graft agency in those countries, so that they can now get hold of those money and know and sanction the relevant perpetrators, because there are individuals, there are companies, they are all it's an organized crime, and no sanctions. I'm sorry to say there's no sanctions.
So, Reverend Ogolo, tell us what's the way forward, because it's affecting our even our reputation. The investors, the foreign investors' confidence is they're losing confidence.
Yes, different stakeholders are coming up with different initiatives to tackle this challenge. Within, like I mentioned earlier on, we just launched a new project tackling the illicit financial flow through asset recovery and management, and then also counter-terrorist financing and all that. Now, one of the first steps is first to empower the anti-corruption agency listed in the POCA. POCA is the Proceeds of Crime Act. Is the National Financial Architecture tackling illicit financial flow in Nigeria. If you look at that law provides an enabling institutional framework for anti-corruption agencies like EFCC, ICPC, NFIU, Code of Conduct, and other institutions like NAPTIP, police, army, the port authority, because these are true all entry points where we can tackle the challenge of illicit financial flow. And now the Ministry of Justice have also come out with regulation for this Proceeds of Crime Act. And these regulations provides how these entities will operate. But one of the challenges that we have also seen is that these entities like EFCC need to strengthen some of their capacity in dealing with this whole challenge. And they need to be what they call interagency cooperation, because one single agency cannot tackle the challenge of illicit financial flow. And there is also a global framework that is available for some of these anti-corruption entities to be able to act effectively. And that's why we have seen like the UN Convention Against Corruption provides that collaborative framework for mutual legal assistance, where a country can initiate a request, and then the other country where the money is can cooperate and to help the country to return the money back. So the challenge, and so the best way to do is for the Nigerian government, which they are currently doing, they put laws in place, is to strengthen these entities. And for these entities, for example, to comply with the Proceeds of Crime Act, they need to set up what we call the Proceeds of Crime Unit or department in their various entity. For example, EFCC have a Proceeds of Crime Unit department that deals with the issue of tackling some of these challenges. And they have also set up recently an international asset tracing unit just to help in helping tackle the challenge of illicit financial flow. And if you have been reading recently, you will see that EFCC have been very effective, because particularly even with this Yahoo and all this cryptocurrency, because this whole thing about illicit financial flow has gone beyond physical cash, because overnight politicians can easily convert billions of naira into crypto and the money moves out of Nigeria. So that is why EFCC and anti-corruption agency need to strengthen their capacity beyond the traditional fighting of corruption, because corruption has gone beyond country. That's why we said it's an organized crime, and so in dealing with it, you have to be organized. You need new technique, you need new tools to deal with the challenges. So the first thing is, one, to make sure that the Proceeds of Crime Act, which is the legal framework on how to tackle issue of illicit financial flow in the country, is strengthened. Then two, Nigeria currently is on the green list of the Financial Action Task Force. And that, as I said, makes it impossible for Nigeria to be an attractive destination for investment. And access to capital become too costly. So Nigeria is taking steps now. Out of the about 15 points, Nigeria have fulfilled about 13 points. And the assessor recently visited Nigeria. And hopefully by October, Nigeria will be removed from the green list. And if that happens, that will give Nigeria that good investment environment where more investors can come into the country. And then the next stage is that the Global Financial Forum on Asset Recovery Principle also state about 10 principles on how Nigeria, who is also part of this principle, sign on to this principle, can strengthen Nigerian anti-corruption agencies to comply with some of this mutual legal assistance. In that way, we are creating an enabling environment for tackling illicit financial flows.
Thank you very much, Reverend David Uwala, Executive Director. Annie, thank you so much for coming and sharing that with us. And also Tanimu Abubakar Tanimu, legal practitioner and a banker, former banker. Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on the program. Yeah. And thank you for being part of the program. I'm Victoria Clinton. Goodbye.
Public Procurement, BPP, wishes to inform the public that the Director General, BPP, or any of its staff do not engage any agent or intermediaries to facilitate the review of any request submitted to the Bureau. Consequently, any individual or group that claims to facilitate requests at the Bureau for a fee or through an agent may be misleading or may be committing fraud.